Right, I'm sitting here with Ewan Wilson, candidate for Hamilton West on the Hamilton City Council for 2019. Now you've had a varied life in your existence. You've stood for council before, actually stood for mayor, was it 1 or 2 elections ago?
So I stood for the mayoralty in 2016 and lost to Julie Hardacre in a well-fought campaign. I think I got 13,000 odd votes and she was a couple of thousand.
No, it must have been the one before that.
That's right, 2013. My memory's gone already.
It's the lack of hair, you see.
It's the lack of hair. So no, you're right, that was 2013.
Yeah.
And so
shows I'm a bit of an election geek when I can actually pin down a particular election year to a particular mayor like that.
Yes. So no, I stood for the mayoralty in 2013 against Julie Hardacre. She won the mayoralty. I think she got well north of 15,000 votes.
Yeah.
And I was 13,000 votes.
So you weren't that far behind.
No, look, we were pretty neck and neck right up until the last poll. But look, the voters voted, and democracy.
And that's the thing of democracy
won.
Is it's the people deciding, and as some people watching this may have noticed, I keep harping on about everyone needs to get out and vote.
And look, particularly in this coming election, I mean, I think in 2016, Hamilton had one of the worst turnouts of any city in New Zealand. I mean, across New Zealand, apathy was alive and well, and the turnout was shocking.
Yeah.
But it was particularly disappointing in Hamilton, and so we really need to encourage people to do that civic duty, get out and vote.
And it's not just a civic duty; it's the fact that if you want Hamilton to be shaped in a particular way, get out and have a say. Because yes, it's the councillors that are making the decisions, but you're making a decision on which councillors make those decisions.
Sure.
And the more people that vote, the better that outcome is a representation of the population as a whole.
Yeah.
And as I've said before, my father always believed if 100% people vote, then no matter what the outcome, you know it's a representation of the majority of the people.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And yes, I think our election system is going to be coming up for review soon. I think that whether we use first past the post, STV or whatever, I think is coming up for discussion.
So every 3 years, part of the 3 years, we discuss the electoral process.
Yeah.
And no doubt that will happen in this
On
term.
that, just before we get on to the main part of this, what's your view? Do you think STV would be a better voting system than first past the post?
Look, I think on one hand it's a much fairer voting system. Votes aren't wasted. It helps minority groups to have representation. New Zealand's getting used to it. I mean, we have it in every district health board election in the country.
Yeah.
Now, I accept there has been some confusion, but we're getting better at it. And so, look, I have nothing to fear about STV. I think it's a robust, fairer voting system, and would support it if asked.
Cool. And you know, I personally think half our problem with people not understanding a particular voting system or another comes down to the fact that we're not taught civics in schools. You look at America; they're taught about politics and things in schools, and they have really robust school elections and things like this, so that people are in touch with how that works. We don't have that here.
No, look, I think part of the poor voter participation, I mean, it's multifaceted. There's not one panacea, but I think a move away from the postal voting system, that's just not working. There's less than 40 post boxes in the city of Hamilton now. So to rely on the concept that somebody's going to receive mail, vote, and then remember to find the post box is just not reflected of today's society. I think moving to a different voting system will help. I think certainly trying to engage more with those who live in our cities will help.
Yeah.
But actually, for long-term improvement, It's about teaching it in our schools.
Yeah.
Not only about voting systems, but the importance of, local government, how it affects everything they do.
Yeah.
And that, because if you catch them at 18, if they vote the first year that they turn 18, you've got them for a life.
Well,
if they don't, you won't catch them until much later in their lives.
Yeah.
And that's a loss to us.
Yeah. I know I was, people might say, indoctrinated into this from about age 8 or 9 onwards, because I come from a family that strongly believed in getting out and voting, and not only voting, but making very well thought decisions on who you were voting for. So you questioned them, you asked the questions, you discussed it with people, you investigated who was going to be the best candidate or candidates for what you want. And I had that long before I turned 18. Like, it was when I turned 18, it was like I was gagging to get out and vote.
Sure.
So
I mean, I think you're right, highlighting the importance of voters needing to take the time to make an informed vote. I mean, but I'm also mindful that people's lives are really busy.
Yeah.
You're juggling work, life, play, children, family, all of those sorts of obligations. But taking some time, putting aside some time to get an understanding of how each individual candidate would bring what they would bring to the voting table. Because it's not necessarily about single item issues. It's about, because actually the way politics and local government, you're not 100% sure of the issues that will come up in your term. I mean, there will always be the issues, the important ones of infrastructure, affordable rates, facilities.
Yeah.
But we've just had an outbreak of measles, and that doesn't have any direct effect on local government day-to-day decision making. We have an obligation under the Local Government Act to enable safe and access to health within our city scope. So having a clear position on things like vaccines is, I think, rather important. And if you don't inquire of candidates, you don't understand what their positions are.
Because that actually gives you an idea of what sort of person you're dealing with.
Correct.
It's not so much just their stance on issues, it tells you a lot about what the sort of person you're dealing with.
Correct.
And if someone's afraid to mention their stance on vaccines during an election, especially at the moment when it's a big news item, then that tells you what else are they not going to tell you about or be open about.
Yeah.
Whereas if someone's happy to be open about things, and if you don't like what they say, then they go, well, that's your decision.
Correct. And I couldn't agree more. Transparency and clarity of critical issues facing the city. I mean, on my website, I've listed all of my policies and my position statements on as many issues as I can.
Yeah.
Because, look, I want people to vote. I'd like them to consider me for a vote, but I'd love them to be informed, and I'd love to try to engage with them. But they need to understand the types of belief networks I would bring to a multitude of scenarios.
Yeah. And see, that's the other thing, is nowadays we've got the technology where it's easier to know this information. Back when I was a kid, the newspaper would be on the dining room table, would be reading the newspaper, occasional TV item, but I'd be reading the newspaper, the stuff that's printed in the newspaper, that's it. Nowadays, you've got, this video for starters, you've got other people doing videos. Anyone can walk up to any one of you candidates and ask for a few minutes to video you on a question they have or something that's important to them.
And it could go viral.
Yeah.
And look, you're absolutely right. Gone are the days when running a local government campaign where you could rely on door knocking, printing a few flyers, putting up a couple of core flute signs.
Yeah.
The way society now consumes information and makes considerations are so diverse and so fragmented. To try to engage with people is more complex.
Yeah.
Ironically, it should be easier.
should be easier. Yeah.
The paradox is it's frequently more difficult.
What I find interesting is that technically, I think the effort has shifted from the voter to the candidate now. That the voter in the past had to go and get the newspaper, sit and watch TV, make the time for these things. Nowadays, with all the social media and everything like this, and websites and all this sort of thing, you as a candidate have to represent yourself in just about every one of these media formats so that people can just sit down, turn on their computer and go, oh, there's a piece about that candidate. Oh,
Sure.
What about this one? Or what about this issue?
Correct.
So the workload has now gone back onto the candidate.
And look, I think you're right, and I'm more than happy to try to make the commitment to doing that workload to get the information out.
People should bug you and get hold of you and sit down for a cup of tea and have a chat.
In fact, I did a post about that
Yes,
just a few
I saw
days
that.
ago. I'm very proud of Smurfette,
Yes.
my sign-written little blue pocket rocket, and I'm more than happy to pop
Seems
over.
blue is a bit of a theme.
Oh, it is. It's my political orientation, but I'm centrist. I'm balanced.
Anyway, now getting to the one question I have to ask, because I ask this of everyone: why should we vote for you?
Look, I think it's about what life experience and that you bring to the decision-making process. So I've had quite a few years in business. I've had years in the past on council. I've just come back from overseas where I sort of feel reinvigorated and refreshed. I studied in the UK and in Canada.
Okay.
And I've just finished working 6 months as a volunteer on an EU and Canadian government development project in the Philippines.
Okay.
So I think I've got a unique set of skills that I can add value around the council table.
Okay. And you've always struck me as a fairly balanced sort. You don't specifically sit on one side or the other, which is not a bad thing. You will look at the information in front of you, has been my experience, and
Yeah.
I think that's good for people to know that you will look at the evidence in front of you. There are some things that are pretty clear and cut, but there are other things that need to be looked at by the individual candidate or individual councillor, and then need to be discussed by the council as a whole. And I think our council works best if you can all come to the table and discuss these issues.
Yeah, I mean, from a councillor point of view, it's essential you bring an open mind to pretty much every debate, so that at least you're open, you're receptive to changes, new information, innovations.
Yeah.
And I do believe I bring a balanced approach to the likes of, trying to get the balance right between city debt, the future growth, and the rates that need to remain affordable.
Yeah.
I certainly have some pretty clear views on things like vaccinations and...
Okay, we're not going to avoid this question. So, what are your clear views on vaccination?
Well, look, I think I believe and trust in the science, and I think it's incredibly dangerous that there is this ongoing promotion of anti-vaccine that has led to the re-emergence of diseases that we had pretty well got rid of. I mean, I've just come from the Philippines where the measles epidemic has caused considerable damage. Here back home, we're encountering the same.
So you must got a bit of shit land in Auckland and go, hang on, have I come home or not?
And so I'm heartbroken.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated by that. And I guess it gets back to your point about transparency. People being clear about their position so that the average voter can be informed.
Yeah.
But look, that's just one aspect. I think
Yeah.
you do need to be balanced. I think you do need to be. You need to consider every issue that comes in front of you, and I believe I can bring that to the table.
What's your views on this relates to future Hamilton development because we are focusing, it seems, on infill housing rather than expanding our boundaries, which I think, after that chat with Mark Servian the other day, I think that's a good thing, because if we do it properly, we can make it work. We can also be an example to other cities as to how this can work. But that also means we've got to make some changes to our infrastructure. Effectively the three waters: stormwater, drinking water, and wastewater, because those pipes were designed for single residency properties, where only one house was on a property. And now I've seen a number of places around my own neighbourhood where the building's gone up. Same amount of the land is used, it's just gone up.
Well, look, growth opportunities are exciting, but they've got to be managed carefully. And my point would be actually going up or infill is more cost effective than going out. I think we've had a history of going out and growing outwards and gobbling up this valuable green land, green space. And in fact, I think we've done it in an unbalanced way. It's been directly in the direction of Auckland, which is important, but I think it's been at the cost of the south.
We could make the joke that we're getting a little bit close to Auckland now, but that's just a dig at Auckland, isn't it?
I mean, the reality is we are connected to their economy. Yeah. They're an $80 billion economy, we're an $8 billion economy, and in fact our future is attached to that growth corridor to Auckland. But the point I was going to say is, whether it's growth to the north or the south, or as we should have balanced growth, or whether it's up or infill, we need robust infrastructure that's capable of managing both those types of growth. The ongoing challenge is how you manage the upfront capital expenditure. And that's when it becomes the equation of needing to determine how you balance growth, facilities, and affordable rates to the citizens. Because although I think this council and this current term has done some good things, particularly around public transport, particularly around engaging the central government and getting funding, I would have never have supported a 9.7% rate increase. That's just unaffordable for the average Hamiltonian. So we need fresh, we need innovative, we need agile thinking. These are all I accept MBA type terminologies, but at the end of the day, what it means is we've got to do things smarter and produce better value, and remind ourselves that this city is a great city, and it's a city that needs to remain affordable to the people who live here.
Yes, because while we are currently, if we do things right, putting things in for the future Hamilton in 30 years' time, 20, 30 years' time, we need to be careful about how that costs the citizens at the moment, but we also can't leave it to be a problem in 30 years' time for our grandchildren or children. Because then all of a sudden the cost is going to be up. All you'd be doing is shifting it. But we can spread it over a lengthy period of time.
I mean, and that whole premise of intergenerational debt is born on that premise that you incur a cost now that has a lifespan of 30 years or 40 years, then surely that should be spread across 30 or 40 years of ratepayers, not rather than just the current ratepayers. So I certainly believe not all debt is evil.
No.
We've just got to be smart how we manage it, and I think that's those types of life lessons that candidates and incumbents need to bring to the council table to help form the right decisions of the future.
Because the other thing you brought up about the progress of Hamilton and the corridor to Auckland also is the fact that with the way Auckland's going and the size it is at the moment, Hamilton is potentially becoming a more inviting place for businesses to set up office. I got quite a surprise when the pamphlet that the council put out about the elections, that orange thing. I got a surprise when I looked at that and realised that when I shifted here in 87-ish, the population was only about 60,000 or thereabouts, something like that, roughly.
In which year?
87.
Oh, right.
It was a really since I've lived here, the population has effectively tripled, near enough too. I sort of haven't really noticed it, but I got quite a surprise. And then I started to think about the industries that have cropped up here. We've got tea production here. We've got a few other things that are happening here. Gallagher's have always been here, like they're part of the history of Hamilton, and they've stayed here, kept producing here, kept production here, kept their inventing here, and Hamilton's now at a situation we're going to have an inland port just right on the edge of Hamilton. We're going to have a situation where businesses can legitimately set up shop here, find their staff here, and not have the problems that Auckland tends to have when you...
I mean, if you look at the Hamilton economy, a lot of things have remained the same.
Yeah.
We are actually, and have been, a centre for excellence in healthcare, science research, manufacturing, academia, and of course, of recent times, new tech startups.
Yeah.
This city is vibrant, it's capable, it's smart, and we are blessed with our geography. We are in that golden triangle.
Yeah.
And as I said before, we are by its very nature then connected to the Bay of Plenty and the Auckland economy.
Yeah.
But what's really exciting in what I'm seeing is not only are we growing, but we're becoming a city where our young graduates are able to get meaningful jobs. The most important economic initiative, it's spelled J-O-B. It's a job.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm excited about Hamilton. So that growth, we have to keep enabling that. And in terms of local government, that's our job. We shouldn't be interfering, and we shouldn't be in competition to the market, but we should be an enabler, a facilitator of economic growth.
And do you think that enabling could also work towards dealing with the cost of Hamilton's increase in population and infrastructure and things like working in partnership with other organisations in Hamilton?
Yeah, our growth and how we fund growth. What we do know is we're growing.
Yeah.
What we also know is we need to continue to fund infrastructure, irrespective of which method we use to grow. But we also know our current ratepayer base can't afford to pay any more rates. So the solution to the funding gap is innovation. It's working with government and seeking funds from central government with their economic development and housing and general economy improvement fund. It's being a little agile. It's thinking about special purpose vehicles as a funding model, as opposed to necessarily trying to take everything from the rate tape. So, moving and managing that growth equation is going to take some agile thinking.
And this is where I think Hamilton can, if we're careful, lead the way in with the agile thinking, coming up with ideas on how to deal with situations and progress in a positive way that could become the sorts of things other cities go, Hamilton did it that way and it's worked for the last 10 years. Maybe we should give that a go.
Absolutely. Hamilton's been, has led the way in a number of ways, but we've also got other areas where we can look at other parts of the country and say, gosh, we should be doing that better. Yeah. For example, we need to be smarter and more innovative with our curbside recycling.
Yeah.
I've just come from a country where, they would take all plastics in the recycling bin. You come back to in Hamilton and you're going, well, we take this plastic, but we don't take that plastic. And I'm going, what's wrong with taking in an ice cream container?
Yeah.
It's just the way it was. We need to be innovative. We need to change that.
Especially when there is, I can't remember which city it is, there's a city where the council are trialling tar seal made from plastic beans instead of shingle, and from what I saw the other day, it makes the road more waterproof, so it doesn't, because apparently one of the problems in New Zealand is tar seal soaks up water. The water goes through the tar seal, it then gets cold and it expands, and then in summer it gets super, super hot and melts, and that basically contributes to the wear and tear on the roads apart from the vehicles. And apparently this stuff has got enough flexibility that even the vehicles don't have as big an impact. Now, yes, it's a bit early to say we could have someone making this here, but it's something we could possibly look at.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
And
look,
again, it comes back to the plastics issue.
I mean,
what do we do with this stuff?
Hamilton's a city of innovation.
Yeah.
And the market will innovate.
Yeah.
And in local government, we need to be helping enable and facilitate and welcome that innovation.
Now, what do you think about Lime scooters?
Look,
I saw a picture of you on one the other day.
Yeah, no, I found it quite. I found it fun. I found it efficient.
Yeah.
And it was fit for purpose. I was able to achieve the task I wanted to achieve. Look, I think when you introduce anything new, rightly so, people point out some of the flaws and the weaknesses. But I think over time, we'll embrace it as yet another very helpful mode of transport.
Yeah, I think the big thing is if people are responsible, like many things, if people are responsible with it, then it will work smoothly and wonderfully. I had a bit of fun yesterday. I snuck up behind the Mayor Andrew King and Councillor Mark Bunting, who were on a scooter going somewhere to look at the Claudelands Bridge development. They were going to have some meeting and discussion about that, and I happened to see them going down the footpath, so I was just leaving, so I stuck up behind them, and I've got an air horn on my bike, so I gave it a good blast.
I bet they welcomed
a
that.
wee bit of a surprise.
I bet they welcomed that.
But the mayor high-fived me because I think Mark got more of a surprise than he did. But and it's transport's going to be, I think, one of the things that influence how smoothly Hamilton works.
And look, transport always triggers reactions from everybody. There'll be those who are really comfortable in their cars and feel the whole idea of funding buses or e-scooters or any other sort of transport is not particularly worthwhile. And then there'll be those who passionate about cycling who don't have a lot of time for people who drive cars.
I could become an extremist and say all cars should go off the road and we should all ride bikes.
Well, you wouldn't get my support on that. But where I think is about a diversified public transportation network. And so, we have to build roads because cars will be an ongoing part of our future, and I think I love their convenience. But I also enjoy catching the bus. I mean, I've just lived in Manila for 6 months, and I took the bus every day to work, an hour in each direction. When I was studying in the UK, I would take the tube, and I would take the train, and it was very efficient. And when I go to Auckland Airport, I take the bus directly from here to there.
When I lived in Wellington, I moved from the country to Wellington, so I lived in a little town that didn't have a bus service, moved to Wellington, and I thought it was gold because I could go everywhere between their bus and their train system. I could pretty much get to anywhere in Wellington I wanted to, and it was really cool. I came to Hamilton at that stage, and the bus system here was a bit crap, to be honest. It's progressed a lot, and I think if we keep an eye on these things and keep thinking outside the box to give people options, and eventually people choose those options more and more.
And look, at just one of those things I've been thinking about and talking a little bit on social media recently is about extending an existing bus service or diverting the bus service from Cambridge into Te Aramutu to the airport.
Oh yeah.
I think as we mature as a city, to have an easily accessible and affordable bus route to our airport is absolutely essential. And it just makes so much sense that since the bus is driving past on the way to Te Aramutu, that why wouldn't it drop off and pick
Yeah.
up at the airport?
And I'm so surprised you brought up something to do with the airport.
Well,
Which is a good thing, because our airport now is becoming almost like the central North Island airport, pretty much.
It would be nice if it had international flights to Australia.
Yes, that would be nice. And I think theoretically and logically it will happen over time. It's just, yes, we need a few more direct flights from Hamilton to places as well, a lot more.
I was reading just recently and being reminded that, we had international flights for nearly 18 years. Because we started in, Kiwi started in 93, 94, and I think Virgin Blue finished their last flight in 2012. So, and of course there was Freedom, Air New Zealand's multiple iterations. So Freedom and then Virgin Blue. Funny to think back and realise that, but yeah.
So looking forward, is there any specific thing that's for you is of major interest, major import that you would say is sort of the central hub for your candidacy? Something that's really important to you?
No, look, I think there are three priorities. Okay. I mean, I've got 20-odd policies and position statements. They're all on my website.
Yeah.
But, if I was asked what my three key priorities, my first one is really simple. I would like to get the balance right between the city's debt, the future growth, and the affordability of rates. In the last 2 years, 9.7 is not affordable as a rate increase. It's got to be closer to the cost of living.
There's a lot of people who think that, actually.
It's got to be back closer to the cost of living.
Yeah.
The second thing is, I think the opportunity to continue to grow the city is incredibly important. It's about economic development, and it's about promoting and managing that growth corridor to Auckland. We've got to play a role in managing what that looks like going forward.
Yeah.
Because we are so linked to that Auckland economy. And then the third, and I guess the first time, I'm then looking at the importance of living in a sustainable city. And you immediately start thinking, so, hey, what can we do to help our environment? And one of the first places I would start is, let's get our curbside recycling sorted.
Yeah. Because if you make it easy for people, then they will use it.
Correct. The minute you start saying, only certain plastics, it becomes complicated. I mean, I've been living and driving in a city in Ottawa, and you can turn right on a red light at certain times of the day and at certain intersections. But at other times of the day, you can't. And so every intersection you'd go to, there would be this moment hesitation as you tried to reread the signs to work out, is it one of the intersections where you could turn right on the red light?
That sounds a bit complicated to me.
It's very complicated, and we need to make things like recycling really straightforward.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, thanks very much for your time.
Pleasure.
And good luck in the election.
Thank you very much.
It'll be interesting to see how things go this election. I say this every time. I'm looking forward to it because I'm weird. But I think it is going to be interesting. The mayoral race is going to be an interesting one because there's so many, and I think it's going to be a close call again. It's just which
so do you
way
think
that
it's
goes.
a three-horse race?
Effectively, yes. I think there's four candidates there that might as well just, they're not really. All they're going to do is soak up votes that's going to have a dramatic effect on
the final outcome.
On the final outcome. If there were the lowest four candidates for the mayoral race not running, my betting on the outcome would be completely different than it is right now. And it's just because you can see what happens because we've got a first past the post system. It means that there's going to be a lot of votes for a mayoral candidate, a good mayoral candidate, completely wasted just because they went to people who were never going to get in anyway. You know?
And look, it's a very valid argument in terms of the flaws of the first past the post system.
Yeah. But, you know, we're stuck with that until the next sitting council decides they're going to change it.
To be brave
maybe.
and change it.
Yeah. But yeah. Oh well. Thanks
Thanks,
anyway.
mate.
Have a
Cheers.
good time.